So for today, we have another tournament coming on in. It is the Ranked League Champions number 8, where, oh, my score is still up there, where the top 8 players of my ranked ladder come in to play in a top 8 tournament. The players are given priority based on LP, which can be gained by winning games, and it's going to be a best of 3 all the way up until the end of the tournament. They'll be playing for the grand prize of $5 worth of Canadian money, and we're expecting some pretty good games today, as we always do, since all of these players are quite seasoned and pretty experienced with the tournament format. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the first game, casted by myself and, of course, the usual, the wonderful Dactor, who should be back in just a second. Here we go into the first match between, let's see here, between Call Harmon and Human Boy Yes Yes. So would you like to introduce us to one of the builds to start off?
Sure thing. I guess I'll go ahead and go over the Norska player. So he is coming in with Wulfric the Wanderer atop his Mammoth with the standard kit. We have double caster, actually, a Shaman Sorcerer of Metal with Plague of Rust and a Shaman Sorcerer of Fire with, let's see, he's hiding his spells. It looks like only Burning Head, no Fireball, interestingly enough. So we have a front line of 5 Marauders and 2 Marauder Spearmen, who you do not see very often. Then we have 3 Marauder Hunters with Javelins, which I kind of talked about earlier. They will be nuking any Skaven monster that they get their Javelins into, especially with Plague of Rust being comboed there. We have triple Skinwolf, and it looks like triple Norscan Warhound, including the Beasts of Tashnar, to round out the build. So how about the Skaven forces?
Well, for the Skaven that I shall be covering in just a second, for the Skaven, we are seeing an actual Vanguard position of Wolfrats, sort of a counter to the counter meta, to dive in onto units like the Javelins and also to chase off Skinwolves, and a fairly standard defensive box style of play for the Skaven. It's going to be 2 Brood Horrors, one of them mounted by Throt the Unclean himself, the Morskatar's Hellion, a very nice single entity duelist, and 2 units of Poison Wind Globadiers, who have been seeing quite the resurgence in the post-patch meta. Some ROR Rattling Guns, 2, also for picking off single entities, and for the Footlord here, actually a Chieftain. Just a standard chieftain on foot with his guardian ability, and of course a lot of Skaven slaves to just hold up the front line. Now, already looking at the game, the front line is pretty thin for the Skaven. Of course, the Poison Wind Globadiers will be able to get in a lot of damage, but if I was Call Harmon, I'd be a little bit worried about these Marauders breaking through the front line if he's not able to put in a lot of support. He does have a Plague Priest with summons though, and that will likely be able to patch up any holes that arise in the front line.
Yeah, they're definitely the Plague Priest is definitely going to need to do some work. The Teethbreakers getting in onto Wulfric now. Now I'm curious how much damage they're going to do and how quickly they're going to do it. It looks like he is taking a fair bit of damage here, but I don't know if it's going to be quick enough. Now you can already see this front line for Human Boy is collapsing a bit. However, 1 unit of Marauders is also going down, so a bit of trading going on, and Wulfric is actually getting gooned pretty effectively. He's already down to about half HP, and he is losing that HP very quickly. Man, the Teethbreakers here doing insane damage, and Wulfric is routing as Marauder Hunters with Javelins are getting compromised by Wolfrats in the backline across the board, and they're unable to... Oh my god, Wulfric is gone, and they're unable to get their Javelins onto Throt the Unclean, and things are looking extremely good for Skaven right now.
Essentially, using Throt the Unclean with the Rat Ogre summon behind Wulfric, and then gooning him out with Throt, plus the Teethbreakers, was really way too much for him to actually pull out. And it's looking like it's already going to be a pretty decisive win for the Skaven, since without the leadership of the Lord, it doesn't really matter how many Marauders you have. they're going to get picked off by the wolf rats and terror routed by the brood horrors.
Yeah, indeed, and you can also see some skin wolves getting charged by wolf rats, which actually is going to go quite poorly for them because skin wolves do rely pretty heavily on their anti-large, and wolf rats actually are not large, so that's not a bad fight at all for the Skaven. As yeah, the remaining pieces of this Norskin build are kind of getting picked apart. And I do, I didn't check or I didn't see, but do you happen to know if the Teethbreakers used the concealment bombs as Wolfric was approaching, so that way it caught Kyle Harmon off guard?
I might have missed it, but that definitely could have been a possibility. They can stay stealthed up until a very close range, and if you're not expecting it, things like that can definitely happen where your lord just gets absolutely pinned down and gunned to death while being slowed by the rat ogres. And yeah, even without their concealment bombs, I think they do have a pretty decent stealth radius, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and Shibu in chat, or Shibu, saying that they did indeed use their concealment bombs as the game started, which that is definitely a very cool little tech piece that I never would have thought of myself. Man, I love seeing unique stuff like that.
Yeah, and essentially that did lead to that was the decisive play of the game. As with Wolfric gone, you can see a lot of the Chaos factions do actually have pretty poor leadership once their lords are gone, and from there, just some pretty nice cleanup for the forces of the Skaven.
Oh man, the
Teethbreakers,
Teethbreakers.
yeah, more than paying for themselves in this situation. Throt with his abilities, just a really nice combo. And essentially that was all that really needed to be done. Eventually a lot of the weapon teams did get shut down by Norska, but it was a little bit too late, as Wolfric was already essentially gone by then, only getting 8 kills to his name and 132 damage value.
Yeah, and
Definitely
all
a
of that
lot
from a
worse than you'd
boat.
expect.
All of that from a boat. I don't even know if I don't think he got a hit in melee, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and that's going to be the first win for Human Boy Yes Yes. And now to jump into the next one. See if Call Harmon is able to pull it back. So starting off for the second game of today, we are seeing the Lizardmen of Call Harmon coming on in with quite a few skinks and cavalry. He also brought a pretty strong front line too, though, with 3 units of Saurus Warriors and 3 units of Skink Javelins. Of course, the ROR Red Crested Skinks, almost a must-have on the Lizardmen roster. 2 Chameleon Skinks too, also very good units, and something that that can be picked sometimes and sometimes excluded are the Pterodon Riders. They have very powerful rock drops, and they can shut down the Empire range units by chasing them in melee or dropping rocks on top of them. For the main single entity force of the Lizardmen, it's going to be a Feral Stegodon. Really nice against things like Volkmar. And of course, or maybe not of course, but pretty commonly seen as Skink Priest of Beasts with Manticore summons. Also, actually, I think a favorite of Call Harmon, the Red Crested Skink Chief on a Cold One mount. A little bit of an uncommon pick, but they come in with pretty nice stats, some anti-large, and are fairly low on the commitment cost when it comes to income. A few cavalry units too, just Cold One riders to flank, and that's going to be it for the Lizardmen. So with that out of the way, what are we seeing for the Empire forces?
Well, we are indeed seeing a full-on box. We talked about how there could be boxes or defensive formations or what have you, but it looks like Human Boy going with the fully enclosed formation. He has Carl Franz, a life mage with only Earthblood, actually. No regrowth to babysit Franz is a little bit interesting. Then we have a Warrior Priest with the 3 most common buffs, just the damage resist, the Soulfire, and the melee attack. We have the Sigmar Sun Swordsman, a few Spearmen, it looks like 3 in total, 2 Halberds, and 2 Greatswords, as well as a Huntsman a great cannon, and for mobility, it looks like just 2 Pistoliers and 2 Outriders, so 0 Empire Knights or any other type of real mass. I am curious to see how this does. I'm a little bit concerned, though, that the Empire might not have enough to stand up to this wide Lizardmen formation.
Yeah, in terms of their AoE and actual damage to kill off the Saurus warriors, they are a little bit lacking. Of course, Franz with his terror could continue cycle charging them, and with the Great Sword infantry, the Empire do still have a melee option to deal with that. But if the Great Swords go down, the Saurus warriors will likely be able to collapse in on the backline. We'll have to keep a close eye on them to determine how the infantry fight goes. Franz will mostly be focusing on the monstrous units of the Lizardmen and trying to rout off as many troops as possible.
Yeah, now interestingly enough, the Great Cannon going after the Skink Priest, I'm not so sure about that target selection because all he's going to do is send off Manticores, and then if he dies, it doesn't matter. He doesn't even have a second spell. I do wonder if maybe targeting down, say, the Coldwind Riders would be a better option there. You can see the Coldwind Riders charging in onto some Greatswords now and doing a ton of damage on the initial charge, and also breaking the Greatsword's formation up before the Saurus Warriors with shields to come in.
Yeah, and here we go. The main engagement is beginning. The Saurus warriors do manage to meet the front line. The Sigmar Sons will be able to hold for quite some time while we see if Franz is able to make some plays. He does stop up the Feral Manticore, and this is a matchup that he will trade very effectively in. So a good win for the Empire, but a rock drop coming down on the Huntsman is going to be shutting down a lot of their anti-large. A lot of their skirmishers too actually getting pushed back by the high number of skinks. Javelins plus dart support is going to be pretty rough, as the skirmishers are really needed to shut down the mobility, the cavalry, and the monsters of the Lizardmen.
Ooh, and you can see some Outriders charging into melee and getting caught by Coldwind Riders. And I'm not sure that they would trade well into those skink cohorts with javelins anyway. You can see some Pistoliers in the back also dying in melee to skink cohorts with javelins. So a bit unfortunate there. And now we can also see Franz getting kind of gooned and surrounded by the Powhawk Sentinels, as the Lizardmen are going pretty far ahead on the balance of power already.
Yeah, some an actual really nice engagement on the left flank with the cohort of Sotek, their anti-large, really just cutting through the great swords, and the Stegodon taking care of the other unit. It will essentially just come down to Franz at this point. And a big play trying to be made, actually diving in onto the red-crested Skink Chief and routing him off. Another hit could actually shatter him, and it does go down. And there we go.
Oh, and indeed.
Yeah, a really nice goon out from Franz. Could actually pull things back, since the Lizardmen can get terror routed off in the late game.
Yeah, though, I don't know. The Lizardmen are just winning so overwhelmingly across the rest of the battlefield. And there's also no regrowth still on the life page. So Franz's damage, I mean, he's going to have a really hard time healing it back up.
Yeah, and of course his actual stamina is going to be draining too without the regrowth. He will slowly get less and less effective in combat as time goes on. It's definitely going to be quite unfortunate. The Jade Wizard too and the Warrior Priest actually getting gooned out by the Feral Manticore could spell the doom for the Empire, since they really need that AoE to chunk through all the remaining infantry of the Lizardmen. The cavalry too is going to be a little bit of an issue, and of course all these ranged units are still at pretty high ammunition. Seeing the Powhawk Sentinels and the Pterodon Riders at pretty good ammo, and of course the Chameleon Skinks at only a quarter ammunition left is going to be more than enough to push the Empire into army losses. And that's going to be a win for Carl Harmon.
Yep, tying it up and sending us to the ace match in this series. As, man, two relatively quick and decisive games here. Both players certainly showcasing their skills on their first picks.
Yeah, and if we just look at the at how it played out, it seemed seemed pretty decisive both ways. Just just really having the right armies for the job. And heading on into the ace match, this should be pretty interesting as instead of counter picks, you actually do see uh, quite with the three factions being picked, it could lead even into some mirror matches, which should be interesting. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the next game.
So we have a Blood Dragon Vampire Lord with, actually, it looks like we have Gaze of Nagash, interestingly enough, as well as the more standard spells. I'm curious to see how he uses that. Then we have a Necromancer, just for the mana battery. We have a White King with Scav's Wrath, so only one White King, interestingly enough. We have a big Air Force with the Devils of Schwarzhofen, and then 2 regular Vargeists as well, so 3 Vargeists in total, and I think this is a rule break.
Oh, on the
Yeah.
flyers.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll have to let the players know then. Let's see here. There is an... Yeah, all right. So, yeah, we'll handle that real quick. As indeed, there's actually, yeah, just a few too many flyers for the vampire accounts.
Let's see. So, what is the protocol here again? It would be to remake, or
I think it is remaking,
yeah, I
and
believe so.
yeah, your opponent will be able to rebuild their army, which is going to be a pretty big loss for the vampire counts. I'll have to double check that rules, but I think that is the standard in this case.
Also, I will go ahead and start the tourney, Legion. Okay, you can go ahead and fill in your scores now.
Oh, whoops. Thank you very much, Doctor. Sorry about... It's okay. I forgot about clicking the start the tournament button.
It's all good. It happens. So yeah.
Oh, they can also put the extra units in the corner. I forgot. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's up to him. I'm assuming he'll put the bats in the corner because I don't think you want to leave yourself open to getting cheesed with mass air, or just any kind of hard counter to this build.
All right. Yes. There we go. I just have to double check the builds, and yes, before you actually head on into the game, it is fine to do that. Okay, whoops, almost gave the vampire counts a very disadvantaged position, but this is a lot better since it makes it where the Bretonnians won't be able to remake their army, and with the loss of only a single Fellbat unit, it's not the biggest deal for the vampire counts. They very much care more about their elite units, things like the Vargeists and the Claw of Nagash, of course the hero squads too. So yeah, there we go. With that now settled, anything else to finish off with the vampire counts build?
Nope, it's just a bunch of chaff with zombies, a couple of skeleton spearmen, and that's about it. So how about the Bretonnians?
Well, for the Bretonnians, we are seeing a pretty standard army. Tons of peasant bowmen, some infantry, a few men-at-arms, and actually battle pilgrims. A pretty elite infantry line with really elite cavalry too. 2 Grill Knights and the Aurowar Questing Knights will be able to face off pretty well against the Vargeists, but only if they're able to get a solid charge on top of them. The fact that their infantry line is fairly elite too will mean that they'll hold very well against the zombies, and that will likely force the vampire counts to move in to make a play. But of course, with the Claw of Nagash, they won't have to really commit their Vargeists until they can find a more advantaged position.
Yeah, no, just the one Scab Scrath, but also there are some Dragon Breaths. I do wonder if Human Boy will be able to use that effectively, as we do see a Gaze of Nagash going down on top of a Paladin and doing a little bit of damage. I don't know if that's really worth the Winds of Magic cost, but it is chip damage, and chip damage is chip damage, so it's not the worst thing in the world. I do wonder how Human Boy is going to plan to use these Vargeists in this particular battle, because I don't know. I guess will he try and get them onto the peasant bowman, or will he just try and get a counter charge in? I'm not entirely sure. Now, he does definitely need to use scab scraths in order to start wiping out these peasant bowmen if he doesn't want his mortis to just immediately get sniped. But a paladin is actually, oh, it's getting surrounded, and actually the first breath kind of whiffs.
Yeah, actually getting a bit of friendly fire on the White King too. A pretty nice initial trade for the Bretonians, especially given that they didn't take a lot of damage from that engagement. But as the main fight actually begins, it looks like the Vargeist are beelining it directly towards the cavalry, diving in instead onto the archers and lifting again. A little bit of bouncing around, but a really nice charge onto these questing knights, bringing them down to half HP almost immediately.
Yeah, but the Claw of Nagash is going down. It's under half HP now. It's just taking so much damage from all this peasant bowman fire, and some direwolves managing to get onto the peasant bowman in the back here. But I don't know. The Vargeists have kind of gotten their burst damage in, and now they're not going to do as well in this extended fight. And if the Claw of Nagash goes down, I just don't really see a way for the vampire counts to actually deal with the infantry of the Bretonians.
Yeah, if the vampire counts were able to win the infantry fight, they would definitely be feeling a lot more comfortable, as they'd be able to cycle charge the heroes. But the Vargeists definitely need that support to actually be able to cycle charge themselves. And with only one unit of knights gone, it's going to be a really rough time for the counts. There's still two basically full HP Grail Guardians, and a lot of the vampire count's infantry is basically gone at this point.
Yeah, a nice overcast invocation of Nahek going down, but I just don't see it being enough. I mean, I don't think the counts could even win the cavalry fight at this point, let alone the rest of the battle. Now he is going for kind of a desperation goon onto the Fey Enchantress here, but I don't know. He's leaving himself open to get countercharged by the Grail Knights, and that's just going to be disastrous.
Yeah, many Vargeists going down, but a big possible play. The Blood Dragon Vampire Lord is still in the air. Opportunities for breath attacks are still here, and a huge one goes down, but actually hitting mostly Vargeists. A few of the Grail Knights do go down,
breaths.
but yeah, definitely not the big engagement that he wants. But a final dive in on the Fey Enchantress could still pull things around. The opportunities for terror routes are still there. It just depends on if this Blood Dragon Vampire Lord can actually take her out. Looking like he's getting surrounded by Grail Knights, and a nice attack animation does actually free the Dragon Lord a little bit, but it's looking like that likely won't be enough. The archers are putting in a lot of damage, and that is likely going to be it with the two paladins now engaging onto the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord.
Yeah, this is Warhammer in 2021. The Fey Enchantress bullying the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord atop his dragon. Just a few misplays, I think, from the Vampire counts, and maybe his build just wasn't the best suited to fight this particular Bretonian build. I'm not sure. He definitely didn't have the tools necessary, or at least didn't use the tools he had at his disposal to deal with the peasant bowmen quickly enough. As you can see, two of them getting insane value, one with 1800 and the other with 1600. Just that is a big win condition for Bretoni in this matchup, and they were allowed to fire off pretty much freely. So
Yeah, that was essentially play that needed to be made there. I think my game might have crashed too.
yes, mine too.
All right. The vampire counts coming in with their Nahek crashes even post game, but we did manage to get a good look at the damage values. Those archers really just being able to come in and staying defended was enough to pull out the win. That's going to be Call Harmon moving up into the semifinals now. Then to start it off with this ace match that we managed to catch against the Maker and Felix, going to be the Lizardmen against the Skaven. And looking at the Skaven forces, we are seeing a pretty standard infantry line. Council Guard with their halberds to kill off monsters, and a ton of Skaven slaves. By the looks of it, with actually no clan rats. Instead, beefing up the front line with Poison Wind Globadiers and bringing in a back line of 2 Warplock Jezzails, one of them the ROR, and 2 Rat Ogres. The leadership of the Skaven going to be an Assassin, a Plague Priest on the Bell, very common, or on a Plague Furnace, very common for that Mortis Engine effect, as it does shut down the Source Warriors fairly well, and a Gracier on Ruined, on a Ruin Bell too. Actually a little bit less common, as the that's going to be a lot of spells with 2 summons, a breath attack, the Scorch ability, and the dreaded 13th spell all together. Pretty interesting, and we'll see how that plays out. But enough of the Skaven. What do we have going for the Lizardmen?
Yeah, so for the Lizardmen, we do have a Lord Mazdamundi pick with Net of Amantok and Apotheosis, and that looks to be about it in terms of spells. We then have a couple of Chameleon Skinks, a couple of Pterodon Riders, a couple of Skink Chiefs on foot, 2 Bastillodon Solar Engines, so just rule of 2 here. We have 3 Saurus Spears with shields, triple Skink cohort with javelins, 2 regular Skink cohorts, and the Umbral Tide. So with the Umbral Tide and the double Bastillodon with Solar Engine, there's quite a bit of single entity monsters sniping here, but that's not what the Skaven are running. So I'm a little bit concerned actually for the Lizardmen. It's because I think that the Warplock Jezzail should have a really good time in this matchup.
Yeah, essentially free range as long as the Pterodon Riders and the Solar Engines don't snipe them out, but they do have a pretty superior range on that front. I think the Solar Engines actually only slightly outrange. No, the Jezzails actually with much longer range than the Solar Engines will likely be able to take them out. The Pterodon Riders will be needed to actually distract them, but it will only be for a limited amount of time, as the Jezzails will be able to take them out fairly quickly too.
Yeah, now we can see the Solar Engines actually overextending perhaps a little bit. They are firing in onto the Jezzails and actually doing some pretty good damage. And now that I look at it, oh man, the Warpstone scroll going down, that's really cool. And we're also seeing some Poison Wind globes being tossed up. And man, they are nuking the Pterodon Riders. That is crazy. So much damage so quickly. I was going to say that there are no slingers and there's not much anti-air. But it doesn't seem like it matters with the Warpstone Scroll and the Poison Wind Globadiers. The Pterodons are pretty much already completely shut down. Yeah, both are already routing, not even able to distract the Jezzails for a second as they just continue firing away happily onto the Solar Engines. And the Jezzails are winning that trade as well. So
the Solar Engine, one of them already at half HP, and of course the Pterodon Riders, they actually have very little HP, so I guess it's low enough where the Globadiers can actually do a lot of damage there. But one of the Jezzails being focus fired by the Solar Engines will be going down, and that's actually not a terrible trade for the Lizardmen, really just the biggest loss being those Pterodon Riders instead. And with the front line now engaging, we'll see if they're actually able to punch through the forces of the Skaven. There's quite a few big threats here, specifically the Plague Priest. But if the Solar Engines actually manage to win out this fight, the Plague Priest could actually get sniped down by them. The Jezzails are actually running out of ammunition too, but the Source Warriors are taking a lot of damage right now. Actually getting slowed down, getting hit by the Globadiers. But a big AoE actually dropping on the Council Guard could change things quite a bit.
Oh, the banishment is huge.
Yeah,
but it does go into Saurus.
HP.
A lot of damage into Saurus as well, and I think the Umbral Tide really need to get involved in this game because they're sitting on reserve right now, and I understand the Jezzails will kill them quickly, but that is a very expensive unit to be sitting in reserve all this time as you kind of lose the rest of the battle. And you can see, the Lizardmen advance is kind of stagnated already. And we are seeing that the Skaven seem quite happy in the backline right now, as both Jezzails are still online. One is finally, it looks like, Yeah, it looks like finally the Natty Boobos are going to get shut down by some Pterodon Riders as well as Solar Engine Focus Fire. And, I suppose the double Skink Chief firing in onto the Plague Priest or the Grey Seer could do a lot of damage over the course of this game. But man, Mazda Mundi also getting kind of nuked down here, having to use an AoE net just to survive.
Yeah, the Lizardmen have definitely secured a pretty nice ranged position. They have solar engines and many skink skirmishers, but they cannot definitely not take a straight up fight against the Skaven. They'll need to rely on their ranged firepower to do that, and I think the dreaded 13th spell is actually coming down on the
Oh my
Salamander
god, that
hunting
does
pack.
so much damage. Look at the Storm Vermin with Halberds are gonna nuke them, dude. The Umbo
Yeah,
Tide
getting
are so
completely
squishy.
surrounded.
Wow, that is a game-winning play. That is a great use of the dreaded 13th spell. My god.
Yeah, and at really high ammunition too. It looks like that tech pick against the Lizardmen actually paying out greatly, with the Salamander hunting pack actually almost completely annihilated by a single spell.
Yeah,
That
man, it's
is,
crazy because it wasn't even the explosion that killed them. It was the Storm Vermin with Halberds and melee just killing them in like half a second. That
yeah,
was
and
wild.
that's going to be it. I guess Extraordinary Life of Felix showing why this can be a pretty rough matchup for the Lizardmen. They did lose their 2 units of Jezzails, but it ended up just being an even trade with the solar engines, and maybe even slightly more effective for the Skaven, since they also managed to take out the Pterodon Riders at the same time. After that, it was essentially just carrying out the win with their single entities, and in the end, they didn't have too much to worry about, just because of the very nice spell usage from Felix in this game. There we go. That is the second win for them, and we'll be seeing them move into the semifinals now.
I guess I'll go over the Tomb Kings. So we have Ark in the Black with Spirit Leech and the Purple Sun, which can nuke cavalry if they aren't able to pull out in time. We have, it looks like, double Tomb Prince on top of actually chariots. I kind of expected them to be on horseback, but no, indeed, they are on chariots, I suppose, to kill foot characters. We have a couple of Tomb Scorpions, so really going actually all in on the anti-infantry here. I think we've seen this build before. And I think Legion won with it last time we saw it, so I'm curious to see if he can pull that off again. But yeah, so we have double Tomb Scorpion, double Tomb Prince on Chariot, very, very heavily into the anti-infantry department. We have double Ushapti Greatbow, including the Chosen of the Gods. And then we have a bunch of chaff with some skeleton spearmen. It looks like 5 in total, and then 2 regular skeleton warriors, a couple of skeleton horse archers, and a single skeleton horseman. So, how about the Bretonian side?
For the Bretonian side, indeed, we are seeing a Fey Enchantress on a unicorn with that magic resistance, with a Paladin supporting on the mobile front, also on a horse, I believe. No, actually coming in on foot. They are all on foot, actually. Go Trek 2. This is going to be a foot squad of Bretonians, not nearly as mobile, but still definitely quite strong and very hard to deal with, especially with Go Trek in the mix. But will it be enough to actually kill off the double Tomb Scorpion and Chariot Lords? We'll have to see. For the infantry front, it is going to be the usual many peasant mob spam, going up to 4, with some battle pilgrims too, as they do actually cut down these skeletons fairly effectively. For units of peasant bowmen, will be pretty hard to rout off, with the many questing knights coming on in. Actually, a mix of questing knights and knights of the realm, with 3 knights of the realm, 2 questing knights, a nice mix for cycle charging infantry and also catching any chariots that come in along the way.
Yeah, I actually quite like Legion's position here, just in terms of builds. He has, as I kind of talked about, gone all in on countering the foot squad, and indeed, we do see the foot squad. There are no mounts for these Bretonian characters, so they will struggle quite a bit against the Tomb Princes on the chariots with the Tomb Scorpion support. Now, the Battle Pilgrims will cut through all of the Tomb King infantry, no problem at all. But they will need to get through that Tomb King infantry in due time because the Ushabti Greatbow will get some really good damage onto the Bretonnian cavalry quite quickly as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be the biggest worry. Of course, the foot squad could try to push through and chase the Ushabti, but I think we saw it last time even when that happened. The gooning from all these single entities of the Tomb Kings should be enough to kill off even Gotrek if need be. Which considering all that, the Ushabti Greatbow will essentially be able to fire freely all the way up until the front line fully collapses, and that's going to be a lot of damage coming in from the Tomb Kings. So we'll see how the Bretonnians manage to deal with that. Of course, they do have a really nice cavalry advantage.
Ooh, this could be a huge volley from the Chosen of the Gods.
Oh,
look at the formation kind of going against the Bretonnians there as they go down to they lose almost a quarter of their HP from that single volley. Now the peasant bowmen are starting to fire in, and the foot squad has started fighting against the Tomb Scorpions. A nice skeleton warrior summon from Arkan the Black going to be pressuring some peasant bowmen in the backline here. And you can see that the Bretonnians are actually managing to get some cavalry onto the Ushabti Greatbow, which could be a huge play. If they're able to shut down the Ushabti Greatbow, then I think the Bretonnian cavalry will have a really good time against the rest of this build. However, the Chosen of the Gods haven't lost a model yet, and they are managing to pull through a skeleton spearman. As Extraordinary Life of Felix not really focusing the Ushabti Greatbow, focusing instead on the Tomb Scorpions, which I'm not sure if I entirely agree with. Trying to save his foot squad, I guess. But Gotrek is hanging in there pretty effectively, and oh my god, the Purple Sun could do a ton of damage here. But it will be dodged out of the way.
And that's going to be Felix saving most of his cavalry, using that advantage quite nicely to catch up the single entities, but this buys a lot of time for the Ushabti to put in a lot of damage. One of them is shut down by infantry though, and it really depends on how well this fight goes in the center. One of the Tomb Scorpions actually nearly down, and it's looking like Bretonnia should be able to win off the single entity fight.
Yeah, they're doing quite well here, considering how all in the Tomb Kings went on countering the foot squad. Now, the Fey Enchantress misses with her bound Comet of Cassandra, but that's not a big deal. Now, Arkan should be able to get another skeleton summon up relatively soon, I think. And that could be a really big play, as the Peasant Bowmen are all getting shut down by the Skeleton Horsemen and the Tomb Prince. And man, the Bretonnians kind of going all in on this blob fight. I really think maybe they should be focusing more on shutting down the Ushabti Greatbow, because the Ushabti Greatbow are just firing in relatively uncontested and getting so much value.
Yeah, and there we go. The blob fight actually switching to the favor of the Tomb Kings, and especially since a rogue unit of Skeleton Horsemen have shut down the archers too, it means that all the range support is going to be on the Tomb King side here, and that may just determine the game outright here, as the Fey Enchantress actually getting routed off by the Tomb Scorpions is going to be a pretty rough situation for the Bretonnians now.
Yeah, definitely. Without the Fey Enchantress, the Bretonnians don't have much of a chance here. They need to hope that she's managing... No, she will not be able to escape. She's on foot, and the Tomb Prince is hunting her down. So with that, I think the Tomb Kings have taken a very decisive advantage in this game.
Yeah, most of the cavalry units have been routed off too, and even the Chosen of the Gods is able to get firing in once again. Arkan the Black though, actually, let's see. Do you have an eye on Arkan the Black, or no? Okay, there he is at very high HP. Will be more than enough to cycle charge Gotrek and the Paladin down. So really at this point there's no real worry for the Tomb Kings as long as they're able to chase off these important targets. Like the Fey Enchantress, actually finishing her off will be very important. It looks like she may just barely be able to rally here.
I kind of doubt it with the Ushabti Greatbow firing in. She's at 200 HP, but they are missing a lot of volleys. Oh, 30 HP now and dead. Goodbye. As yeah, the Tomb Kings, I don't think will have any trouble closing this game out at this point. Um, I'm not sure if there's any win condition for the Bretonians left.
Yeah, the Paladin 2 now routing, as his leadership isn't insanely good, and it's just going to be Go Trek up against the many skeletons, range units, and cycle charging of the Tomb Kings. It looks like for Legion, he really has this matchup nailed down, as he can pretty consistently win out these single entity fights by the looks of it. Just the combination of the Tomb Scorpions and the range support seems to be really securing those victories. A lot of AoE too is, yeah. It seemed like he was just really ready for to take that fight, and was pretty confident staying in there too, really paying off in the late game.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I will say that I think Felix's big mistake was that he did have his cavalry in the back line at one point, and he could have jumped on top of both the Ushabti Greatbow. Certainly, the Chosen of the Gods were extremely compromised, but he chose instead to go in on top of the single entity blob with all of his cavalry. And while it did do good damage, I think it was just kind of missing the win condition there slightly. Um, but it's a relatively easy error to make, and Legion capitalized on it well. And yeah, so we will be going into Life of Felix's first pick now, and I'm curious to see what he picks. I think he's kind of an Empire main, and indeed we are seeing him hover them.
For the second game with Legion against Extraordinary Life of Felix, it looks like he is going to be going for a pretty aggressive build by the looks of it. A lot of zombie halberds to make sure he doesn't get rushed by cavalry. But that's not really the exciting part of the build. What we're actually seeing is 3 units of animated hulks, 2 scurvy dogs, Silostra on her crab, and a fleet captain too. Both of them coming in with their summons. We're actually going to be seeing 3 summons for Legion today. The zombie summons, the crab summons, and the knight summons will be really good at overwhelming Empire range builds. Not to mention the bombers will be able to push through the front line and shut down the infantry and the huntsmen too, with a bunch of bombers also looking like this is a very committed infantry killing build, with a nice amount of anti-cavalry too, in the form of the animated hulks and the pole arms. So with that out of the way, Dactor, there's a lot more going on in this build too, just a few dogs and bats also, but much less exciting. And with the timer ticking down, take it away with the Empire build.
So the Empire has Volkmar the Grim with his standard kit. We have a Light Wizard with Net of Amontok and a Bright Wizard with Burning Head. We have a front line of Flagellants and Spearmen, as well as the Sigmar Sons. It looks like 5 Spearmen in total, so maxing out on the state troops there pretty much. We have the Sterling's Revenge, Free Company Militia, and the Silver Bullets Handgunners ROR, so 2 ROR guns there, as well as a pair of Huntsmen. Only 2 Huntsmen. Oftentimes you'll see more than that, but in this particular case, it should be a pretty good amount. We then have Triple Empire Knight, basically as a mass blocker and also to pressure the backline, though they will struggle against animated hulks. So I think in terms of builds, Legion might be at a slight advantage here.
Yeah, I think so too. Given that he does have 3 summons and a lot more mobility than the Empire, he should be able to shut down the range units, and essentially that's going to be the plan when it comes to Legion here. As once the range units are shut down, he should be able to win the infantry fight with the bombers and win the cavalry fight using the animated hulks. So it will really come down to how well he shuts them down, since if they are able to fire, they can kill off Silostra, the hulks, and even the bombers if need be.
Yeah, now
Volkmar 2.
Volkmar posturing a bit. He needs to be careful. If he gets surrounded by animated hulks, he will die very quickly. And actually, Silastro getting in a nice charge here. And yeah, Volkmar definitely needs to be very careful here. If he gets staggered and surrounded by animated hulks, he may just die. And that would obviously be a huge disaster.
Yeah, he has very low melee defense values too. He's already
Ooh.
taken quite a bit of damage, and a summon to actually block up his retreat. This could actually be a really bad situation for Felix, but Silastra...
Now a ton of damage onto Silastra though, too.
Yeah. And a huge commitment on the summons too, but once a Sterling's Revenge are down, that should work out much better in the favor for Legion. And here we go, a big dive in from the mobile forces. Are going to be trying to shut down the ranged firepower, but it might have been a little bit mistimed. Silastra already down to half HP. But the pick on Volkmar is looking quite good, unless he manages to escape.
Yeah, now Fellbats and Scurvy Dogs getting into the backline, and the deck droppers with bombers also doing a ton of damage onto these Silver Bullets and Huntsmen. So I actually really like Legion's position here. I think he's doing a great job of pressuring the backline. Now, if he does stagnate here, he'll struggle quite a bit. Silastra taking a ton of damage. It will take time to heal that back up. However, yeah, Felix already losing. It looks like both of his gun units, so only the 2 Huntsmen will be remaining, and a Scurvy Dog actually getting onto one of those Huntsmen in the backline here is a really nice play.
Yeah, shutting them down with only 1 Huntsman still able to fire, but the deck dropper bombers are nearby. They'll likely be able to shut them down. And Legion, sensing this, moving in with Silastra once again more aggressively, will likely be able to start terror routing at least a few of these frontline units. But the fight is still pretty contested. Many of the animated hulks have actually gone down, all of them at about half HP. And the Huntsmen too, actually, pulling back a tiny bit. Looks like they may be able to find a safe position. This could be pretty big, and a big burning head too coming down the line of these zombie pole arms may actually win out the frontline fight for the Empire.
Yeah, it'll be close, but I don't know. The Huntsmen are getting focused down by all these deck droppers and taking a ton of damage quite quickly. If Extraordinary Life of Felix can stabilize and kill all the deck droppers, then I think he's in a really good position. But that's a really big if at this point. Now, with that being said, he's winning the front line, and basically the win condition for the Vampire Coast at this point is Silastra. But when you look around, actually, it does look like the coastline starting to look a bit thin here. The deck dropper with bombers will need to kind of carry this game out, as they'll need to kill a lot of infantry. And a net of Amentot going down onto Silastra right in front of all of the Empire ranged units. She could take some pretty good damage here.
Yeah, this is looking to actually be going pretty well in the favor for the Empire. All their ranged units just barely managing to come back in the late game, while taking out most of the mobile forces of the Vampire Coast. The bats are gone, the dogs are gone, and there are no more summons to go into the back line. And the bombers too, although pretty strong against the Huntsmen, now that they've actually been whittled down, it looks like the Huntsmen may just barely come out on top. Silastra will be able to dive in on top of them, but given how many spears are left, I think the Empire has actually managed to pull out the victory here.
Yeah, they certainly look to have, and even the Vampire Fleet Captain of Vampires is getting hunted down, is getting run down by Volkmar, slowly but surely, as the horses are going to be, I don't know, pushing her and then biting her. A little bit awkward there, but yeah, man, definitely a commanding lead for the Empire at this point, as the deck dropper bombers are crumbling and nearly out of ammo as well, as one of the Huntsmen stabilizes. And yeah, I don't know, I just don't think Silastra has what it takes to kill all of this infantry.
Yeah, she is mainly good for her disruption and terror, and on a big crab, just not enough to take out the hordes of infantry, resulting in a win for Extraordinary Life of Felix. Very well played. Some nice defensive play on all of the range units, securing them by pulling them into safer positions using his cavalry, and securing the frontline fight using the Bright Wizard and Volkmar. And speaking of Volkmar too, he made a pretty nice, or even I'm not sure if it was intentional that the dive in at the beginning of the game, but he did manage to escape with about half of his HP left, while really slowing down the Vampire Coast rush onto the backline. I
Yeah,
think,
it was pretty crazy. He went in and just did Volkmar things, I guess. I mean, one of the tankiest swords in the game, no doubt. And Coach just not quite able to kill him.
yeah, I think it was the play was really important as it did actually stop the summons from diving in onto the range units, and instead going for a surround on Volkmar, just barely not paying off for Legion and closing out the game. As we get into the game, Legion against Felix for the ace match, which, well, I guess I'll leave you to cover the Empire if
Sure thing.
since
Yeah,
you're familiar with the build.
yeah. So it's Marcus Wolfhart with all of his usual stuff. We have an Amethyst Wizard to essentially, um, it's kind of Spirit Leech kiting. He's going to delay the engagement onto the Skaven, trying to Spirit Leech down Mortars and Jezzails. We have a front line with just a bunch of state troops. We have double Huntsmen to focus down Brood Horrors and other large targets. We have double Pistolier to skirmish. And we have a quad Knights of the Blazing Sun as kind of the main killing power in this build. It does very well against all Skaven large targets because they all regenerate. Now, what do the Skaven have to try and counter this build?
Well, for the Skaven, we are seeing a very defensive build coming in here. For Felix, going to be 2 units of artillery, actually bringing in the Plague Claw catapults, an artillery piece you almost never see, especially since the advent of Poison Wind mortars, but they still have their place. They can do quite a bit of damage, and we'll be keeping a close eye on them to see if they're able to hit some clumped up Knights of the Blazing Sun. That would probably be the best option for them. In the center of the Skaven, it's going to be 3 Jezzails, as you predicted, Dactor, and some Poison Wind Globadiers to help in the frontline fight. Pretty standard center area with a also pretty standard outline, coming in with many Clan Rat Spears, Rat Ogres, and really the only thing that is a little bit different are these Eshin Triads. They're really good against cavalry, so they're definitely not a bad pick. Just a little bit expensive, so you don't always see them, but I expect them to do fairly well at holding the back. The Grey Seer of Plague 2 on the bell, with the dreaded 13th spell, seeming like a favorite of Felix nowadays, Scorch, and just some normal Clan Rat summons.
Yeah, I am. So it's very very all in on the ranged pieces here from these Skaven. And actually, Spirit Leech going down onto the Grey Seer of Plague, and it looks like Legion is going to go all in on sniping this Grey Seer, which is interesting. I thought he would go after the Jezzails. I'm a bit concerned for Felix for sure, because I feel like this Empire build is quite good against what he's taken. It's a very greedy Skaven build, in that it has taken so much range, and there isn't a lot to protect it. Certainly not against 4 Knights of the Blazing Sun, which should be able to run all over it pretty effectively. And the range tools also of the Empire are quite strong here. And we're actually going to see, okay, we're going to see Dreaded 13 spell onto the cannons. This is going to one-shot the cannons.
A very
but so much damage onto the Grey Seer of Plague at the same time.
But he does manage to take out one of those key pieces for the Empire, but...
Oh no, Marcus Wolfhart, he's gonna kill the Grey Seer though.
Yeah, charging up his Amber Bow, firing it down, and it's really low on HP, but it misses!
And it misses! Come on! I don't understand. Marcus has never killed a thing in his life. He is like a pacifist, dude. But, okay, memes aside, the backline of the Skaven is getting harassed very heavily now by all these Knights of the Blazing Sun and Pistoliers. And, well, okay, the Grey Seer is looking like it's going to survive for a while, but yeah, the important pieces of the Skaven are still getting compromised relatively effectively here. The Rat Ogres need to really be microed perfectly if the Skaven want to survive this onslaught, as all the Jezzails in this little pocket here might be getting shut down, but Legion a little bit slow on the uptake here. He will be able to, looks like, shut down one Jezzail entirely, but the other two might continue to fire for a little while longer.
Yeah, a nice net coming down actually allows those Knights of the Blazing Sun just barely to sneak into the back line. But they're taking a lot of damage on the approach. The Jezzails are still able to fire. And if the Jezzails manage to live into the late game, that's going to be it for the Empire. If they don't have enough cavalry to actually chase them down, then that's gonna be it. Even if the Grey Seer does go down, and that's not even a guarantee either. It's still at very high HP. And it looks like the Skaven are about to win the front line.
Yeah, Skaven are doing quite well, but if Wolfhard is able to snipe out the Grey Seer, which, ooh, that's, okay, it's good damage. If the Amber Bow comes down now and he doesn't miss this time, it might be enough to kill the Grey Seer, which would hurt the Skaven morale greatly and cost them all of their magic. And that might be enough to start turning this game around, but at the same time, man, the Skaven, all of their range units are still online somehow. I have no idea how they managed to protect all 3 Jezzails and both their Plague Claw catapults. They went so greedy into ranged here, and Legion's just not quite able to shut it down. I'm kind of surprised by that, actually.
Yeah, but essentially, just the 4 Knights of the Blazing Sun, some of them getting caught up by infantry, some getting caught up by rat ogres, was just barely enough to shut them all down, it seems.
Oh, Amber Bow! Oh, it hits this time. 400 HP. That's the only way back into this game. And the Grey Seer is routing.
Yep, it is out of range of Marcus's shots, though, I think. So it looks like there isn't much to actually kill it, but the Amethyst Wizard in the back could actually throw down a Spirit Leech to finish off the Grey Seer.
The Amethyst Wizard... Oh, it's going for it! It's going for it! There's no way that Oh, he doesn't have magic for an overcast, though. Okay, yeah. But Knights of the Blazing Sun is going to come in, and it looks like kill the Grey Seer.
Yeah, but a summon coming on in. It's pulling away towards the Amethyst Wizard, though, and the Spirit Leech will come down, but the balance of power is looking really rough for the Empire.
Yeah, it's looking extremely Skaven-driven. You can see they have so much online still. Marcus Wolfhard actually can get shot to death by Jezzails in due time. And, I mean, he doesn't have the ammo to kill all of this. There's no way.
Yeah, and sadly enough, too, for the Empire, the Grey Seer of Plague actually manages to survive with 90 HP. Rallies, too. And in the background, we're seeing the Empire forces getting torn apart. The Grey Seer might even manage to live to tell the tale of this battle.
I don't understand.
Absolutely brutal.
Legion went 100% all in on sniping the Grey Seer. I mean, he spent everything. He cast all his Spirit Leeches onto it. He's focused his cannons, all of his spells onto it, and he just wasn't able to kill it. And I think that's kind of, I guess you can call it unlucky. You can call it a miscalculation. However you want to phrase it. That missed Amber Bow is definitely, I think, what cost Legion the game.
I think so, but things were looking pretty bad for the Empire nonetheless. The cavalry, just looking at their damage values, getting most of them actually less than 600 value on 3 of them, and only 700 on 1 Knights of the Blazing Sun. Basically only one of them really paying for themselves. They really got shut down by the forces of the Skaven infantry. The Empire here also didn't have a lot of infantry themselves to really pressure and push in, and I think that played a pretty big part too for how the game went on going into the late game. It seems like those knights just really couldn't find a way to break their way in. Let's get into the ace match in the semifinals between Ice Power and Call Harmon. It's going to be Coast against Bretonia. And Dactor, which faction would you like to cover?
Well, I'll go ahead and leave you to your Coast. I know how much you love them. So, we are seeing the Fae Enchantress with Double Paladin coming in from Cal Harmon as the hero squad. The Fae with the Dwellers below, actually. I was wondering if we might see that. I guess you can use it onto artillery, perhaps, or I guess maybe mobs, although that seems like an inefficient use of magic. But we'll have to see. I'm actually very curious. We then have some men-at-arms, a couple Spear men-at-arms, Quad Battle Pilgrim. Yeah, 2 men-at-arms, 2 Spear men-at-arms, and Quad Battle Pilgrim. So actually no peasants, a relatively elite quote-unquote Bretonian front line. We then have, it looks like 5 peasant bowmen, including 1 with pox arrows, no fire arrows, so not trying to make use of the weakness to fire on the coast roster. And then we have, it looks like, 1 questing knight, 1 knight of the realm, and double knight errant. So an interesting mixed cavalry corps. So how about the coast? What do they have?
For the Vampire Coast, it's going to be a defensive build for the Bretonians to rush into, with 2 mortars take out any peasant archers pretty quickly. The leadership debuff is quite large and will rout them off in 1 or 2 volleys. A single cannon unit to fire in on the cavalry too should be trading pretty well, and if it stays alive until the late game, it will actually pay for itself, given how much cavalry it can actually target down. All the artillery is defended by zombie polearms, and the front line is held up by zombies and some bombers. Now, a little bit of a worry for the coast is that they do also have 4 gunnery mob handguns, and whether or not they stay alive could play a huge part here. They're defended by a Lamprey's Revenge, but there's enough cavalry that they could get overwhelmed. So that's definitely a little bit of a worry. Noctilus taking up the front with his Moon Dial will be summoning into the back line of the peasants to get them routed off. And a nice double Scurvy Dog play to pressure archers too. So pretty nice coast build, but with some pretty open flanks. The Battle Pilgrims might be able to run over the front line too, but that really depends on if these bombers go down, and the cavalry can only take down so many targets. They'll have to choose either shutting down the bombers or the handguns. So right off the bat, Dactor, just taking a look at the 2 builds for these players here, I'm feeling like Bretonia has a pretty nice edge as long as they can charge those handguns without losing all of their cavalry.
Yeah, the Lamprey's Revenge could actually get a lot of work done here, I think. A lot of it will come down to these carronades, though. Can they get some nice side volleys onto the knights just to take them out? And also, mortar RNG is pretty big here. You can see the first volleys miss entirely, pretty much. But those aren't the priority targets. Battle Pilgrims are spread out enough that they won't take as much damage from mortars. The Peasant Bowmen are the real prize. And you can see some really nice initial carronade shots going down, killing, it looks like already 7 questing knight models. So that's a good start for that artillery piece. Now, Noctilus is playing very aggressively here. He's going to Captain Roth's Moondial into the back line, onto the Peasant Bowman. And that's really nice. He should be able to get 1 Peasant Bowman shut down quite quickly. Now, the Fae and her double Paladin Goon Squad are coming in from the flank, and it looks like they might be charging in very aggressively onto some handguns. We'll have to see. They could take a lot of damage here, I think.
Yeah, they are shielded though, and given that it's only 2 handgun units, that's actually a really nice engagement. They're able to shut down one of the gunnery mobs, and now that allows these knights to actually dive in directly into the center without taking too much damage. On the left side, though, it's a completely different story. They've been shut down by the carronades, and there we go, the dwellers below.
Yep, onto the
right
carronades.
on top of the carronades. That's going to kill it 100%. There's essentially no escape there, and they'll just have to get as much damage as they can before they crumble away. Now,
yeah, already, though, they've killed one of the flanks of knights, and also the knights have all been postured so aggressively on the flanks that Scurvy Dogs are able to get in uncontested into the back line. And the Peasant Bowmen, you can see, are scattering to the wind, not able to find a comfortable position to fire from at all. And if the Peasant Bowmen aren't allowed to fire, then it doesn't really look good for the Bretonians. Now, actually, the carronade lives. Maybe the dwellers below wasn't overcast?
I'm not sure. It will be crumbling away, but it'll still do a lot of damage before it actually gets killed off.
Yeah, that's going to take a long time to crumble away. Now, you can see the Fae and her paladins diving very aggressively just into some mob. They're not really worrying about who they're fighting. Just trying to fight anything they can see. Now, Noctilus just chilling in the back here, surrounded by peasants. He's having a great time. Man, I'm really concerned. The Bretonians definitely need to protect their peasant bowmen and get them firing, because as long as they aren't firing, I mean, they aren't going to be, getting any value in. With that being said, though, a lot of the Vampire Coast chaff is starting to get worn down. Uh, so it's, I'd say it's a relatively even game right now, actually.
Yeah, the peasant bowmen actually coming in the late game will be able to put in a lot of damage, and it really depends on whether or not they die. If they manage to stay alive, they'll be able to kill off the Lamprey's Revenge. But if the Bretonnians run out of cavalry and infantry, Noctilus plus the Lamprey's Revenge can pretty easily kill off the hero squad. Not to mention, there is a still full HP units of Knights Errant that will be extremely important actually for killing off these scurvy dogs and protecting the archers.
Yeah,
We'll see.
one deckhand mob that I believe must have been a summon, getting onto one of the peasant bowmen is definitely unfortunate for the Bretonnians.
Yeah, and a nice pull away though from Carl Harmon just to keep them alive. But yeah, it's still pretty even. There's been a lot of losses on both sides, and the Vampire Coast are going to be running out of their guns very soon.
Oh, another Dwellers Below going down, actually, on top of the mortars this time.
Yeah, and hitting the pole arms too. The Vampire Coast definitely don't want to be running out of infantry, as they really need that to tie down the single entities, and also just to fight off against Bretonnian battle pilgrims, and also to chase off the peasant bowmen. Losing the artillery and these halberds would be a pretty big loss, and it looks like they'll be holding out okay, and actually stabilizing fairly well.
Low. Yeah, the Fae is kind of low, and she's been using all of her magic on those Dwellers Below, not able to heal it up very quickly at all. And man, I mean, yeah, the cannon pieces and the mortars are starting to get shut down a bit, but I don't know if it's worth that insane winds of magic cost. As you can see, they're still taking a long time to crumble down the rest of the way. Now, a nice Knights of the Realm unit in this backline might be enough to finish off some of those artillery pieces, but two peasant bowmen going to get caught up by the same scurvy dog unit at once, and they're going to rout very quickly.
Yeah, that is an absolutely huge loss for the Bretonnians. Almost full HP peasant bowmen getting routed off is a huge loss, and a big mortar shot landing into putting in a lot of damage. Really, the fact that the artillery has been able to stay alive for so long is ending up being a pretty bad situation for Bretonnia. Despite those dwellers below, it just really wasn't enough. You really need something like Gotrek, something a little bit more sticky, or your cavalry to be shutting down those artillery pieces instead. And there we go. It's going to be a tap out from Carl Harmon. Ice Power coming in with the Vampire Coast build to actually to pull out that victory.
Yeah.
The artillery just really paying for themselves. The dogs doing well.
I think it was definitely the dogs. The dogs were the MVPs there, and you know, it's I understand Carl Harmon getting aggressive with his cavalry, trying to get onto the back line. But when you do that, you're leaving all of your peasant bowmen open to be charged down by the scurvy dogs. And at the end of the day, those are kind of your win conditions. So I don't know, maybe it would have been better to be slightly more passive and patient, but it's always easy to say in retrospect. It was definitely a nice try, a tough matchups though.
Yes, for sure, and especially that left flank of cavalry getting shut down by the handguns. I think if they were able to stay a little bit safer, it could have gone differently for Bretonnia. And of course, those peasant archers getting shut down due to ice powers. Wonderful dog micro. It's always nice to see them pay for themselves so much. And that's going to be it. Ice Power is moving on to the finals against Extraordinary Life of Felix. Well, I guess I will start off with the Dark Elves. I'll leave Skaven to you this time. And for Ice Power, up against Felix, it looks like he has brought the classic double Manticore Morathi combo. This is the bread and butter of Ice Power, and it's pretty hard to counter a lot of the times too. Though with Skaven, that is a little bit more of an option. His cavalry force consists of mostly Dark Riders, 4 of them in fact, 2 with shields, and the very mobile, high damage, blob killing Slaanesha's Harvesters, Doomfire Warlocks, are going to be very nice in this situation if he can actually keep them alive. The double Scourge Runners, actually triple Scourge Runner Chariots, will be a huge threat to the Skaven infantry and monstrous units alike. And with a pretty simple front line, looking like these major threats are going to be Ice Power's core army. Also, I forgot to mention on Marathi, of course, it's going to be a Soul Stealer, and I think the Doom Bolt ability also very standard kit. So with that out of the way, Dactor, what do we have for the Skaven?
So with the Skaven, we have a very weapons team focused build. Surprise, surprise. We have a Grey Seer of Ruin. Actually, wait, that's not common, is it? No, indeed, it's not. We have Howling Warp Gale, the dreaded 13th spell, and it looks like that's it. Now, I'm guessing. I actually can't see a Plague Priest, so it looks like that's going to be all of his magic is in the dreaded 13th spell and Howling Warp Gale. Very interesting. He also has the anti-air ability, so I guess he is predicting Ice Power's Double Manticore Marathi and trying to counter it in that way. He has the Natty Bubo's Sharpshooters, the Teethbreaker's Rattling Gun ROR that are hidden. So we could actually see an attempt to snipe out Marathi very early into the game just using a net plus the Teethbreakers. Could be very interesting. We have, it looks like 1 Poison Wind Mortar, 2 Poison Wind Globadiers, a bunch of Skaven Slaves, and some Clan Rats. Some Skaven Slave Slingers, and then it looks like Quad Rat Ogre. So, very interesting build. Which, I don't know, I think it's pretty all in on sniping out the flyers for the Dark Elves, though. There's not going to be Clan Rat summons, which are a huge tool in the Skaven arsenal for dealing with rushes like this. So I'm a little concerned on that front.
Strangely enough, though, the Dark Elf frontline is pretty thin, which does sort of help this sort of this heavy weapon team style. They'll have a lot less to worry about, and the Globadiers will more or less be able to shut down the front line with the assistance of the Skaven Slaves. This game will essentially come down to how well this backline actually gets compromised, and the Chariots are probably the best option to do that. We saw that earlier today with our practice games, actually, where the Chariots can plow through the front line, and with a huge threat overload, that might be a pretty big break from the Skaven, but there are a lot of Rat Ogres, and that might be able to shut down the Chariots. We'll just have to see as the game gets underway. Actually, a nice
really nice
Giselle volley. Shutting down some Chariots, getting in a little bit of damage, but Dactor, how are you feeling about this situation?
Well, the Teethbreakers are going to need to shut down these other Scourge Runners quite quickly here. Now you can see this huge flank overload from Ice Power, and I don't know if Felix is really responding quickly enough, but one Scourge Runner is already pretty much shut down, and another one is taking a huge amount of damage. It really all comes down to this huge flank push right now. The Natty Bubo Sharpshooters are about to get compromised by some Dark Riders. That's a huge pick, as the Rat Ogre is overextending slightly, chasing the Dark Riders in the backline. And now Marathi's starting to come in. Now, the one flank for the Dark Elves is already pretty much collapsed, but the other flank, where the overload is happening, is going quite strong. We need to see some summons or some magic in general, I think, over on this right flank, the right flank of the Skaven right now, if they want to win this game. But a Howling Warp Gale onto Marathi right now could be huge, but she's going to land, and with that, there will be no more opportunities for the Howling Warp Gale to be paired with the Rattling Gunners. Now, the Teethbreakers are able to kill one Scourge Runner, and a Doombolt going down onto the Council Guard, going to do some decent damage, but the Skaven are starting to have their backline compromised a little bit, maybe, as a really nicely timed Murderous Prowess comes in.
Yeah, it looks like Ice Power, actually a really nice play. Focus firing the Rat Ogres is actually going to really secure his cavalry and give them the mobility they need to do a lot of damage, but the Teethbreakers firing into that hero blob, at least with Marathi and the Manticores, the net going down, and Marathi has actually taken a lot of damage, but the Teethbreakers are now getting shut down.
Yeah, and with the Teethbreakers getting shut down, there isn't that much killing power left. Ooh, but actually the Dark Rider is leaving the Teethbreakers. I think that might be a bit of a mistake. He definitely wants to shut those Teethbreakers down long term. But yeah, the Storm Vermin summon, the Dreaded 13th spell, is actually getting kited pretty effectively. it's not going to get much value here, and I kind of like the Dark Elf position right now as the Manticores hop in onto the Teeth Breakers, and it looks like Ice Power is taking a commanding lead in this game right now as he shuts down all of the backline pieces.
Yeah, his cavalry has managed to stay alive, and despite a lot of damage coming in for Felix, it looks like it might just not be enough. He really needs to rely on his guns to shut down units like Marathi and the 2 Manticores, and they're at basically full HP. The Council Guard will be able to help out a lot in this situation. But knowing Ice Power's build, yep, the Soul Stealer does go down, and that will be killing off most of the Council Guard, I think.
Yeah, and man, that is going to be so huge too to heal up Marathi, as the balance of power goes into the favor of the Dark Elves, and the 1 Manticore does rampage, and it'll die to the Council Guard. But I don't know, I just don't think the Council Guard is going to have what it takes to hard carry this game, as a Doombolt coming down onto the Gracier Ruin, doing some pretty good damage. And you can see the balance of power now heavily in favor of the Dark Elves as well as the game state, as Scourge Runner Chariot's a full health Scourge Runner Chariot chasing off all of these tattered Skaven remnants. Should be enough to seal this game, I think.
Yep, some Teeth Breakers getting finished off too, and it looks like that's going to be all the weapon teams essentially gone for the Skaven. There are 2 units of Globadiers. They've done their job, killed off the infantry, but that's not really what the main threat is here. You have Marathi at 2/3 HP.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
And 2 Manticores still alive.
The Howling Warp Gale, just to stop Marathi from getting away, but she gets up in the air anyway because nets make sense in this game.
Yep, you have to be very careful about those nets for sure, as the flying units will still take off if they're not getting completely surrounded by troops.
Mm-hmm.
And there we go. It's the last stand of the Skaven. The Grey Seer of Ruin, with decent combat stats, is not going to hold out against the Manticores. And if another Soul Stealer comes down, that's essentially it. If there are no more Soul Stealers, the Council Guard could still do okay if there's some very lucky hits from this Grey Seer of Ruin. But likely that won't be the case. We'll still see if that plays out though, and it seems like Felix opting to go for that high RNG situation. A really nice volley on the Slaanesha's Harvesters too. Actually, we'll be getting a lot of damage, but final engagement is looking pretty bad.
Soul Stealer going down.
Yep. And there we go. Hits every single unit left for the Skaven, charges in from the Dark Riders, and you know, the Slaanesha's Harvesters do get finished off. One of the Manticores does get killed too, but that's in army losses, as Soul Stealers against Blobs is essentially the main way you counter them, as the Dark Elves. A really classic Dark Elf AoE Soul Stealer build from Ice Power, doing quite well against the Skaven forces. There were some hiccups here and there where his chariots took a few shots, got a bit of damage, but I think he really had a threat overload in this situation.
Yeah, definitely the Rat Ogres overextending a bit and not really responding correctly to the flank overload is what lost Felix the game. Ice Power had all of his mobility on the one flank, and I think there were only like 2 Rat Ogres over there. So, of course, Ice Power just able to surround and pick them off. And then from there, the whole game just snowballed. Honestly, I mean, the choice of magic was a little interesting. Not having Clan Rat summons is incredibly bold as the Skaven, since that is pretty much universally considered to be their most powerful spell, and one of the most powerful spells in the entire game. So didn't quite work out. It is interesting to see. I do love seeing, you know, different types of magic used, but in this case, didn't quite work out.
Well, I guess I will go over Ice Power's build, as it is a Vampire Coast build against Empire. One of my favorite matchups, and we are actually seeing one of my very own builds. It's going to be a triple deck gunner build, quad hand gunner, 2 bombers, 2 sirens, Noctilus leading the front, and of course the good boys, Scurvy Dogs. Standard front line of mobs and some halberds if there's a bit of extra money, some bombers, and yes, this is a very classic style that I usually run. and I'm interested to see how it plays out. Not an exact mirror of my build, I think, but definitely quite similar. And
Yeah, I've
yeah.
played against a build like this before. When I played Turin, so I kind of know how it works. So for Extraordinary Life, I feel like it looks like we're seeing the same build as earlier. Not going to mind game himself by changing his build up. He's quite happy with it. So we have Volkmar the Grim, a Light Wizard with Net, a Burning Head Mage. We have 3 Unbreakable units, 5 Spearmen, the Silver Bullets, the Sterling's Revenge. Wait, are the Sterling's Revenge here? Actually, he might have changed the build slightly.
Oh.
As I do not see the Sterling's Revenge, he's replaced them with a 3rd Huntsman, a pretty nice idea in my opinion. I think that the triple Huntsman is better than the double Huntsman in the Sterling's Revenge. Then we have triple Empire Knight, and that looks to be rounding it out. So, pretty simple build. Just some ranged units and a lot to protect them. Now, will they be able to deal with the Huntsmen, or the Deck Gunners, I mean? That remains to be seen, because actually the triple Deck Gunners should trade pretty well against all of these missile troops.
Indeed, but the map is a little bit awkward. And this is actually, like you mentioned earlier, it is a pretty common build that we've been seeing creeping up into the meta. Deck Gunners against the Empire, played by, as we've seen, a few players now. Myself included, Turin of course, and now Ice Power. It's a pretty nice style as long as your Deck Gunners don't get shut down. And they generally do well against cavalry archer builds from the Empire. But the map does make it a bit awkward. There's a bit of a forest in the back. There's actually a few hills on the left and right that can block your line of sight here. So it's not actually optimal for Vampire Coast, but it should still work out.
They're discussing in chat. Felix asking why all of a sudden everyone is counterpicking him with Coast.
Yeah, it's a meta that I think is a little bit of a shift in meta where Coast got nerfed and now people are feeling confident bringing it into Empire. It really is the Deck Gunners and their ability to shut down the Empire forces. People are being very proficient with their Scurvy Dogs and Deck Dropper Bombers. And that in combination, especially the Deck Dropper Bombers, can really mulch through an Empire frontline really quickly. In this case,
Yeah.
Ice Power going for the Ground Bomber variant should still be able to do pretty good, but the Flagellants and Sigmar Suns can manage to sneak into the backline to shut down the guns.
Yeah, and I think the Burning Heads will be a big key in this game. Will they be able to shut down the Sirens? If not, then, I mean, the only other magic damage in this Empire build are the Silver Bullets. There is no, Flaming Sword of Ruin to get the guaranteed magic damage, so he has to hit the spells.
Yeah, there is a Volkmar, so he can at least
There is
keep
a
the
Volkmar,
Sirens
you're right.
back away from the center of the range units. But it's still pretty hard to actually shut down both at the same time. The Sirens too, if they take to the flanks, they will win out the trades against the Empire Knights, as long as there's no Flaming Sword of Ruin, and in which case there isn't. They do have quite a bit of freedom, or alternatively, they can also stay on the flanks to shut down the handgunners.
So you can see Ice Power is walking through the forest, which I don't know if that's a smart idea, because now the Deck Gunners are still stuck in the back of the forest, actually. And they want to get out of there, I would think. Although, actually, they might have a really good firing position here, because of the weird change in missiles.
Yes, they can fire through trees for the first 3 seconds, and with gun units, that's almost guaranteed that they'll be able to clear the tree line, firing off immediately into the Sigmar Suns, breaking their shields, and as they move into the range of the handgunners, there should be quite a bit of damage coming in. Volkmar playing quite aggressively. If he can dive in onto this backline, that would be great for him, but a huge focus fire from all the guns are going to be targeting him down. The bombers too, clearing up the front line of the Empire, allows the guns to all fire
Volkmar is taking so
together.
much damage.
And oh my goodness, half HP already on the first volley. But
Ooh,
a
but
nice
a huge burning
head.
head. Oh, but it misses the Sirens, which were the real key target there. Very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Now, Wraithstorm also, man, Wolfmar is taking so much damage. And the Huntsmen are not able to really return fire very effectively. Um, oh, man, he might go down here. If he dies, then that's certainly going to be the game ending on the spot. But manages to escape for now, I think. It's very
Yep.
close.
He should be able to live if he dodges away from the deck gunners, and a big charge of the Empire Knights could actually save Volkmar here, but he's not strafing too much, and it looks like at 300 health, he's just barely going to be able to make it out alive there. A very close situation, and the
Those Kirby
front line
dogs onto the
post-
Huntsman, and man, it looks like the Empire line is falling apart as cavalry are getting picked off. The Huntsmen are getting compromised. It's looking really rough.
Yeah, but very importantly, the front line of the Empire is able to barely manage to push through. And these remaining Empire Knights, if they manage to kill off the deck gunners, it could be an absolutely huge swing for Empire. As Volkmar is still alive, and late game range units for the Empire is absolutely huge. It really depends on if the Scurvy Dogs can live, and one of them is actually getting killed off by a unit of Empire Knights. So balance of power might be a little bit misleading if a few things go well for Felix, but we'll have to see, as now the Empire Knights in the center do get routed off.
Yeah, the Sirens need to be picked off by the Silver Bullets. They should be able to turn and focus them down, though. And with that, I mean, I don't know. The triple deck gunner are all still in this nice position where it's so weird to say it's a nice firing position in the tree line. But they can't really be countered by Huntsman fire very effectively because of the trees. Yeah. The Huntsmen are actually going to struggle to... Yeah, they should kill the Huntsman pretty effectively because the Huntsman missiles will be blocked by the trees.
Yeah, strangely enough, the deck gunners, it's actually a really good position for them. But Volkmar, still alive, is going to be regenerating. He might even go all the way up to 75% HP. He does have the possibility of shutting down these Sirens, but can the deck gunners actually get shut down here? There are a unit of Scurvy Dogs in reserve, and with the terror of the Sirens, a lot of these Empire Spearmen could actually get routed off. A really nice burning head does come down, though. Kills off a few handguns. And this could still go for the Empire side. They just really need to shut down the deck gunners, and it looks like they just don't really have any cavalry left to do so.
Yeah, they don't have any cavalry left, and the Huntsmen are firing in, but again, the trees are tanking for the deck gunners, and the deck gunners are allowed to fire out of it at full strength, and they're going to go ahead and try and focus down Volkmar again. Will this be enough to kill Volkmar? If Volkmar gets finished off, I have to think the Empire are going to lose this game. This is kind of the key moment, so...
Yeah, so Wraithstorm coming down, but Volkmar, I think he's actually going to make it to the deck gunners. Really only the handgunners can protect and kill off Volkmar here, but they're a little bit too far away, and the tree position actually working not in the favor of ice power, since Volkmar is actually going to be getting protected from a lot of gunfire here. He will likely not die, given that he has fairly nice HP. And that's the second deck gunner unit getting taken out too. A lot of the Empire ranged forces are able to run away from Noctilus, and I think the Empire can actually win it here. Really, the only biggest worry is the fact that the Scurvy Dogs and the Sirens are still alive.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Volkmar, of course, doesn't really worry about the Sirens, but the Scurvy Dogs getting onto all the Huntsmen could be big. It might just come down to whether or not Noctilus can hard carry against Volkmar. I do wonder what there is actually to kill Noctilus efficiently here.
Yeah, essentially, Volkmar with cycle charging can do okay, but they trade about evenly, and the handgunners, Silver Bullets and Huntsmen, are really what are needed. But another unit of Huntsmen are going down to the Scurvy Dogs, and the Silver Bullets on the verge of routing, but it looks like they'll just barely be able to keep it together. However, the handguns for the coast are finally going down. Volkmar still regenerating, and it's gonna be a pretty interesting match. The Sirens and the Scurvy Dogs are still alive. And that's really one of the biggest problems for the Empire right now. If only a single unit of knights were still alive, they'd be able to push those dogs back. But all the knights are gone, and that means any unit that tries to spread out is going to get picked off by those scurvy dogs. Any lone huntsman unit will be in a pretty rough position, and a few of them actually stealthed right now, I believe. Won't get chased down by dogs, but a huge loss now. The silver bullets actually going down.
Yeah, I don't know. There's like a great race here. I don't think the Empire is going to be able to save this Huntsman unit. Now, this might be the last summon, actually, for Ice Power, and if it is, then that's a big deal. But if there's another summon in the back pocket of Noctilus, then that will, that will be huge in the end game for sure.
Yeah, one more summon will be very painful, and the Sirens, they'll be able to terror out the Empire Spearmen before they get killed off by Volkmar, and that's going to be a rather large play. Not to mention Noctilus at full HP against a battered Volkmar. I would put my money on Noctilus in this situation. And this is looking like it is likely going to be it for the Empire. A very close game, but some nice play from Ice Power, keeping these core units alive, will likely pull out the victory here. But we still can't be sure. Volkmar could still win out against Noctilus, and until then, both players are trying to take picks where they can. Scurvy dogs chasing off some spearmen.
Oh man, Volkmar is gonna just wreck these Sirens though. Man, Noctilus, I don't know, he might get dragged down with all of the infantry remaining. The Sirens really need to be kept alive here, I think. If there's, I really do think it comes down to if there's a summon in the back pocket. Like, I think that's what decides this game.
The Sirens actually terror routing most of the Empire troops. The Spearmen too are going to be gone, and that really lets the Scurvy Dogs have free reign in this situation. Actually diving in directly past the Spearmen, going straight for the Huntsman, one of the important win conditions. But the Sirens, having routed off a good number of troops, are going to be crumbling away now. And it's just going to be Noctilus and the dogs and possibly a summon. The summon could be absolutely huge, but we don't know if there's enough winds of magic for it. It did get a little bit more expensive as of the most recent update. And
well, I'm not sure if he has any charges left. I wasn't counting them. But is it 3 or 4? If it's 4, I think he has one. If it's 3, I think he doesn't.
It is 4 charges of zombie pistol summons.
Okay, I believe he should have one more then, and he is using Arcane Conduit to try and get the Winds of Magic for it right now. That will pretty much decide the game, I think. There's all these unbreakable troops, enough to drag Noctilus down with the support of Wolfmar cycle charging.
Yeah, and a banishment coming down. Misses. It catches a single dog. Oh, and it looks like that one dog will be going down. But just a single dog. It's really more important for actually trying to break their leadership at this point. They actually dive right on back in. And it could be an absolutely huge play, but they get caught up by the Sigmar Sons. And now it's just Noctilus against Volkmar. The goal of Felix is to cycle charge as quickly as possible. Otherwise, Noctilus is going to kill all the infantry. But he can't be too foolhardy with his cycle charges, since if he is, Noctilus can kill Volkmar.
So yeah.
And there we go, Scurvy Dogs trading into a few more troops. It looks like they kill off a few units of Flagellants, and they could still be very useful here. They could actually rout off one of these units of Spearmen, and that gives Volkmar a lot less time to cycle charge.
Yeah, the Scurvy Dogs are crumbling though, so every second that they're out of combat is another second that they're losing HP. They're trying to get onto the Bright Wizard, which does have some combat stats to help deal with Noctilus, so it's a pretty smart pick. Now, all the debuffs going down, but they're kind of mistimed actually, as the Empire doesn't really have much in combat with Noctilus as those buffs are going down. Quite unfortunate.
Yeah, it does buff up Volkmar though, and that lands a pretty solid hit on Noctilus, and there we go. We're seeing the heal cap on Noctilus now showing up. That's going to be rather big.
Onto Volkmar though.
Yeah, it really depends on how well these cycle charges go. Felix does have a pretty long timer, since he does have the Sigmar Sons, and there's nothing left on the coast side except for Noctilus. So essentially it's just going to be cycle charging. And Noctilus now down at half HP. I think he lands a hit against Volkmar, but he'll still take at least 2 more hits to actually take him down. And the cycle charges are going to be absolutely brutal against Noctilus unless he lands those lucky hits.
Yeah, it's man, another Arcane Conduit going down. I have to imagine he has a summon charge left. And man, if he can get that summon charge off, it will be so important. I don't know, every second that goes by is another second that Noctilus is getting wrecked. And he needs that summon right now if he wants to win this game.
Yeah, and I've been in this situation before. I can almost assure you, the last summon is actually very difficult to pull off if you have been using a lot of your heals, and that might be what's slowing down the charges there. But Volkmar taking another hit, now down to 400 HP. He is very close to the kill zone for Noctilus to actually finish him off, and Ice Power, you can see he's manually pulling in Volkmar. I mean, pulling Noctilus to chase Volkmar because he doesn't want to waste his attacks on all this infantry. But Volkmar dancing around forces Noctilus to make some swings. Volkmar charging in and disengaging. Some nice back and forth between the players. Just essentially dancing with death for both of them. Since if Volkmar dies, that would actually almost immediately lose the game for the Empire.
Yeah, and now he's finally getting his buffs off. I was waiting for that. But at the same time, man, everything is just routing at the worst possible times. And 99 HP for Volkmar.
Oh.
And the balance of power is back in the favor of the coast. But I don't know, I think the Sigmar Sons, with just having Volkmar giving his buffs, I think the Sigmar Sons might be able to carry this. It depends on the summon. It really depends on the summon. I cannot stress that enough.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a pistol summon either. Just a normal summon of zombies would be enough to kill off the Sigmar Sons and would win the game for Ice Power and the series too. But it doesn't look like that summon is here.
Oh, the long-range Soulfire Bombardment.
Oh my goodness.
A little bit of damage.
Yeah, just a couple points of damage, and Volkmar just taunting Noctilus.
Oh, crumbling. Noctilus is crumbling.
Yeah, and oh my goodness. There we go. It's gonna be a win for the Empire. Because, like you said, that one summon would have made the difference. But in this case, Noctilus getting taken down in a really epic game between the Empire and the Vampire Coast. Noctilus now finally losing to army losses. That's going to be the game for Felix.
Yeah, wow, what a comeback from Felix too. It looked really bad for him for a while there.
Yeah, for sure. But this is actually a pretty common situation with these types of coast builds. Volkmar is an absolute beast in the late game, and if you turn your guns to actually fire in on top of him, if you don't finish him off, his regeneration and his eventual dive in on the back line is essentially the way that the Empire comes back. Their range units are the other option to come back, but we saw Ice Power really nicely chase them off with his Scurvy Dogs, one of them at 1700 damage value. But sadly, just the other win condition for Felix coming in and really pulling out the victory.
Yeah, and now we are going to the ace match to decide it all.
So for Ice Power's Empire up against the Bretonnians of Felix, it's going to be a pretty heavy infantry force, all very standard for this matchup. Lots of spears, halberds, and swordsmen. The Sigmar Sons, just because they're a very good unit, and the very elite Royal Altdorf Demogryph Knights, supported by a unit of Demogryph Knight halberds, is going to be the core cavalry force for Ice Power. He's brought Karl Franz too with his host of buffs to really support this cavalry fight, but he'll have to be careful that he's still securing counter charges, otherwise this force will die pretty quickly. He's also brought in a unit of great cannons just to force the Bretonnians to advance, and for his caster, going to be a Jade Wizard with healing, the Earthblood, and regrowth. Regrowth, of course, very good with Franz, since it does give plus 100% vigor. Now, Dactyr, what do we have for the Bretonnian side?
So for the Bretonians, we have the Fey Enchantress coming in with Dwellers Below and Earthblood, a favorite of the Extraordinary Life of Felix. This is that Dwellers Below. We have Double Paladin on top horseback. We have, some cavalry. It looks like quad questing that, including the Companions of Canel hidden in the trees. Actually, one of those are a Knights Errant. Then we have a bunch of peasant bowmen. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 peasant bowmen and 4 spearmen at arms to round out the build. So no peasants and a ton of archers.
Yeah, so a pretty interesting build. That is a lot of peasant archers. But do you think they really have anything that they need to be worried about here?
I mean, it all comes down to the cavalry fight, right? So at the end of the day, I mean, will the peasant bowmen get their value firing into the cavalry? I don't know, because they might just get forced back by the infantry on the Empire side. Like, the infantry on the Empire side could push through, get onto the peasant bowmen, and win the game that way. And I actually don't know what the Bretonians have that would stop that.
Yeah, essentially just the cavalry, and I guess that's exactly how this match will be going down. The Fey Enchantress and Double Paladin are good here, but they are very exposed to cycle charging from Franz, and if the Fey Enchantress takes a snipe from Franz, that will essentially be game. There'll be no more healing for the Paladins, and Franz's Terror should be able to rout everything off here. And speaking of terror, the Bretonians also opting for no terror of their own to help against the Empire infantry.
Yeah, they don't have access to much terror in the roster, so it's not
essentially
that surprising.
Essentially just Lewin and Hippogriff Knights, I think.
Yeah, and the Green Knight, but you would never really see that against Empire, I think.
And here we go. The cavalry moving on along the left-hand side. This the cavalry force plus Franz should be able to win out.
Yeah, I think the Bretonians want to pull back here. I don't think they want this fight at all.
Yeah, and looking like, there we go, a pullback.
Ooh, this is going to be really awkward, actually. The Empire could just go down the hill right now, and it'll take forever for the Bretonians to get back into position, and that's exactly what they look like they want to be doing. Although Franz is continuing to fly forward. No, I think they will do that. I think they're just going to go down the hill, and the Bretonians are out of position for this.
Yeah, a few questing knights on the right flank of the Empire are moving in, but they don't have too many good targets until the front line actually gets engaged. The archers, though, actually getting in some really nice damage against the Sigmar Sons, but there's not a lot of Bretonian infantry here, and a big cavalry engagement looks like it's going to go down, but there's a lot of archers here on the Bretonian side.
Yeah, it's going to be whether or not the archers can get their damage, but I don't know if they can. You can see, man, 2 peasant women already routed off, and the Bretonians have 1 cavalry unit, 2 cavalry units that are pretty much completely out of this fight. I don't know. This is looking kind of rough for the Bretonians right now. I think the Empire are going to smash this cavalry fight very easily with Karl Franz's buffs, and with 2 of the Bretonian cavalry being completely out of position for this.
Yeah, most of the archers aren't really able to support here either, and the Fey Enchantress taking 2 very big hits from Franz, and if a third one goes down and she routs, that's going to be absolutely devastating for the Bretonians. A nice counter charge too from the Demogryph Knights onto the Questing Knights.
Man, the Bretonians need to get their cavalry in here. I don't know why they're taking so long. The Companions of Canel are completely out of the battle. They haven't done anything. They've just been sitting off. I mean, I guess this is very taxing, of course, on the micro. But man, these are huge mistakes to be making this late into the tournament.
Yeah, especially
man, the Fey Enchantress gets terrified. Ooh.
And actually routed off now. It looks like she'll be fleeing towards the Empire infantry too, which will make it really easy for her to be chased off. And if not that, she'll be routing off for quite a while. Another big charge and a lot of cavalry still being engaged. The Demogryph Knights are at half HP, slowly being worn down, but even in this situation, there's a lot of spears here, and like you mentioned earlier, Dactor, the infantry for the Empire is actually beginning to push back the Bretonian peasant bowmen now.
Now, okay, if the Fey can come back, then this is still kind of winnable, as the Demogryphs are getting dragged down. But the Fey comes back. He needs to immediately pull her back to safety, because you can see the Demogryphs are actually getting killed. And over time, the peasant bowmen should be able to kite back the Empire. It's just they don't really have much to kill Franz. The double paladin will need to do it. Franz goes back in. The Royal Altdorf Griffites are still around, and man, this is like so huge here. As Franz's charge is gonna, it looks like, rout off one of the paladins, and
Yeah, and finishing off the questing knights too. Without the questing knight support, Franz can pretty easily take down 2 paladins. He does take a bit of damage himself, but he has some knights to support, and that's one of the paladins routed off.
yeah, and man, one Empire Knight is like full strength, and ooh, the other paladin is routing as well. And these Empire Knights should be able to clean up the Peasant Bowmen quite effectively, and the Peasant Bowmen don't have anything to protect them any longer, so they're just going to get run down by Empire Infantry. And Franz goes on to the Enchantress, and I think this is going to be where the game ends.
Yep. Oh my goodness, 2 very, very high damage hits on top of her back-to-back, rout her off immediately. And even if she does come back, her heal cap will eventually be hit. And the fact that she continues to rout is really bad for the Bretonnian leadership. We're seeing both paladins getting chased off now by knights. And it doesn't even look like there's much cavalry left for the Bretonnian side. Balance of power going very heavily towards ice power. And there we go. It's going to be a tap out from Felix with a very heavy archer build, but not being able to finish off units and actually get the value on them that he needed to. All of them getting pretty low value. And essentially ice power just really securing that cavalry fight.
Yeah, definitely GG, and congrats to Ice Power. I think Felix maybe just not the most familiar with this matchup. Maybe his build is a little off kilter, and his play, he just didn't seem to. He just didn't look comfortable. I mean, he had a couple of units that he was forgetting for a while. He didn't have all of his cav in the fight at the critical moments, so it happens. And yeah, definitely Ice Power with a very impressive showing today. Winning yet another one of these tournaments. He has definitely been a beast.
Yeah, that is now 3 tournaments of mine that Ice Power has won. So congratulations, and if you're in chat, I will contact you for your tournament prize shortly and soon enough.